President Trump has changed his mind and, in a pretty shocking turn of events, has decided that the United States will continue providing military aid to Ukraine. So today we're going to talk about what we know so far, what may have prompted this change, and then the Russian reaction to this news. Now, starting out, this really came out yesterday during an NBC News interview with President Trump, where he said, we're going to start selling more weapons to NATO, and big news around Russia and Ukraine coming Monday. Let's give that a listen.
The president said he's disappointed in Russia and told us he thinks he'll have a major statement to make about Russia on Monday. Though when pressed, he did not say what that statement will be. The president also said he just made a deal today with NATO in which he says the U.S. will send weapons to Ukraine through NATO, and NATO is, quote, paying for those weapons 100%, including the Patriot air defenses that Ukraine has been asking for, and that NATO will distribute them.
Now, we've talked about this possibility before. This seems like it was right up Trump's alley, right? Sell more weapons, more money for the United States, more jobs for U.S. citizens, more investment coming into the U.S. And we can sell things like Patriot interceptors, ramp up production, stand up new factories, sell those to our allies in Europe that can use them, or they can choose to donate, give, or sell those to Ukraine. It's a win-win-win-win-win all around. I don't know how many wins we need to have there. And then on the back end, you can show that U.S. technology is effective in countering Russian ballistic and cruise missiles, right? Great, positive all around. It does kind of look like that's the direction President Trump is taking this in. Now, there's a couple other options here as well that may have pushed the president over the line to go from, let's just stop the freeze to no, there's additional and new aid coming. One of them, tragically, happened just a couple days ago and made the front page of the New York Post today, which is known to be a publication that the president does look at from time to time, where they documented this case where a 1-year-old child in Kherson, a Ukrainian child, was, for lack of a better term, executed in a Russian drone attack. And you can see the front page of this major publication here in the United States. This is part of what's been known as the human safari in Kherson. We've talked about that in a couple of videos on this channel, and I'm working to get somebody that just put together a big documentary on to talk about this as well. I'll link some of their work in the description below, but this has been just sick. The Russians have been hunting Ukrainians in Kherson, and the reason this specific instance stands out is, yes, look, civilian casualties in war are tragic. They happen, they're tragic. Children dying in war. Unfortunately, it happens, but it is tragic. In this particular case, the FPV-style drone, those are the first-person view drones. I'm going to play some footage here on the screen to give you an idea of what that looks like. Drone pilots on both sides have become very, very effective. They're incredibly good at their work in terms of being able to fly these FPV drones into open hatches of vehicles, hit moving targets, hit people on motorcycles as they're swerving to try to avoid getting hit. We've seen countless examples, actually, of Russian and Ukrainian operators going in to strike what is just a vehicle, and as they approach, you see civilians jump out and they veer off, and they decide that's not a valid target. We're not going to hit it. So in this case, with a 1-year-old child playing in the playpen, that means the FPV drone operator was watching that child, identified the target, went in, knew what they were targeting, and killed that 1-year-old. According to the grandparents that were working there, they said he was just there playing in the playpen when the drone detonated. Shrapnel pierced his heart and killed him almost immediately. The child named Dmitry, who just celebrated his first birthday 2 months ago. The Andrei Yermak, the kind of President Zelensky's key advisor, said, quote, "This was not an accident. This was a manhunt. The operator watched a child playing through his drone camera, and he attacked in cold blood. This is just one case among hundreds. For Russians, killing civilians in Ukraine has become sport. The frequency of the drone attacks in Kherson has led civilians to describe their home as a human safari zone, where they're hunted from the sky by deadly Russian devices." Again, if you want more information on that, and it's awful and disgusting, because it is genuinely the hunting of civilians, I'll link some videos and resources in the description below to dig into that a little bit further. Now, it may have been that could have been something that pushed President Trump over the line. It also could have been the rapid increase in Russian drone and missile attacks against Ukraine. And we've talked about this for a couple weeks now. Every other day, there's a new record set. More drones, 741 drones and missiles fired into Ukraine in one night just a few nights ago. And 2 days ago, President Zelensky put out a statement. Kyiv came under massive bombardment, where he said, quote, "This night, Russia launched a massive combined strike that lasted almost 10 hours. 18 missiles, including ballistic missiles, and around 400 strike drones, of which almost 200 were Shaheeds. This is an obvious escalation of terror by Russia. Hundreds of Shaheeds every night, constant strikes, massive attacks against Ukrainian cities. This means that acceleration is needed. We need to be faster with sanctions and put pressure on Russia so it feels the consequences of its terror. Today, I talk with partners, in particular the Coalition of the Willing, about additional funding for the production of interceptor drones and the supply of air defense for Ukraine. The tasks are absolutely clear. Such Russian strikes must be responded to harshly. This is exactly how we will respond. Now, we have seen, since President Trump took office, a drastic increase in Russian drone and missile strikes against Ukraine. And there's a couple of different ways that you could potentially read into that. One is that Putin believed that Trump was going to be pushing for some sort of negotiated settlement, so he was trying to get the upper hand at the negotiating table. Another more pessimistic view is, unfortunately, that we've seen play out now for a couple months, is that Putin thought there would be no repercussions from the West and the United States if they ramped up attacks on Ukrainian cities. That has generally been how this has gone, unfortunately. Now, I would say that one way to show American strength and dominance in the military and technology fields is to provide resources to Ukraine to say, hey, Russia, look, we're able to protect Ukraine halfway around the world without even deploying any of our men and women in uniform. We just sent over some more equipment, helped them stand up more of these drone interceptor production facilities, maybe in Ukraine, maybe in Poland, maybe just providing some of the necessary equipment, like the rockets with certain fuses that are used to shoot down the Shaheeds. There's a good way for the United States to come out of this looking stronger than ever, and hopefully that's the path President Trump is on right now. Now, we did kind of see this coming for a period of time. It was not an overnight switch. It's been trending in this direction since the news came out about 10 days ago that someone mysteriously, and more on this in a second, just happened to freeze Ukraine aid out of the Pentagon. Because a couple days ago, President Trump was pushed on some of this during a press briefing, and he came right out and said, like, hey, look, Putin's kind of been stringing us along. And it made it seem like maybe President Trump has seen the light here and that Putin does not want peace. And there are no indications, even from Russians, that Putin is trying to negotiate some sort of settlement here. He wants all of Ukraine. But nonetheless, let's give that a listen. President Trump just a couple days ago.
I don't know. We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. For you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to vote?
I'm looking at it.